Hi, I'd like to welcome everyone to a interview and reading we're going to do featuring Ryk and Kathleen Spoor. Ryk and I have written many novels together over the years, but we're going to be talking about work that he's doing either on his own or with Kathleen. And what I want to start with is a series they've been working on called Fall of Veils. And the reason I want to start with that is to some degree self-serving. It's that we just published, literally the day the convention began, another book in that series, Jamaica Blue Magic. So this is partly a shameless plug, which is what authors and publishers do. And because you haven't read the book and haven't bought it, you should do so. And now is the best time possible to do it.
Everyone should buy it.
Yes. But I want to start by we will in a short while. Ryk will be doing a reading from Jamaica Blue Magic. Then we'll discuss the series a little bit more, and then toward the end of the session, he'll do a reading from a different book he's working on. What I want to start with though is the Fall of Veil series. Jamaica Blue Magic is actually not the start of the series. It's the second book in the series, I believe.
Yes.
But give us a little bit of the history of the series and where things stand, and can you start the series reading Jamaica Blue Magic, or you need to read another book first?
Absolutely, you can start it with Jamaica Blue. In fact, in some ways, Jamaica Blue may be better than the first book for a starter. In other ways, not, but it's certainly an acceptable way to start the series. What happened was that we published the first book, French Roast Apocalypse, with Double Dragon Publishing, and Double Dragon has gone out of business recently. So you guys are going to be publishing the first one pretty shortly. I'm having it re-edited now just to make sure, because I saw there was some errors in the original printing, so we're having it gone over one more time, and then we'll hand it to you. The same thing happened with the first volume of my Demons of the Past trilogy too.
Yeah.
You could definitely start with Jamaica Blue.
Yeah, and we also wanted to basically make the French roast be consistent with Jamaica Blue also. So we went over and we added a few things to make both books, flow better.
All right. So in other words, the edition that Ring of Fire Press will be publishing is actually a revised edition from the original.
Yes.
Right? We'll
Correct.
call it second edition, right? It's I trust me, you'll learn all these little tricks. I learned them actually as an author.
We can even add a little something in the back, or front.
Sure. Where did you, if you can, what's it about broadly, and why did you decide to base it in Jamaica, set your characters in Jamaica?
Well, Jamaica Blue Magic is really a story about identity. I sort of wanted a story about a paranormal being who is essentially cursed into being human, and what it would be like for them. And the lead character, Dylan, has to come to terms with his past and what it's really like to be a human being, and what real monsters are, and how his friends throughout the book are trying to cure him of his humanity, while at the same time they're trying to solve a mystery and deal with a political faction that is trying to kill off paranormal politicians that are on the island on vacation. I decided to have it happen in Jamaica because I had come up with a few ideas concerning, and this is rather silly, I kind of wanted to have zombie pirates, and I was also interested in some of the history behind Port Royal and
And you tied that all in with the mythology.
Yes, I tied it in with the mythology of the story and mythology of the world.
So I'm just curious as where and how you came up with the ideas for this, not just for this book, but for the series as a whole.
Mm.
I was looking into various mythologies, Celtic, Greek, Roman. Um, I also enjoy reading a lot of history, so I was also interested in, I want to say,
Well, you started it, didn't you
yeah,
start it really as a, you started by building the background of the world starting in like the 1800s, sort of starting with the gangs of New York, adding magic to it,
yes.
basically.
I was looking into a lot of American history, especially the draft riots of 1863. So my first book, the background history, essentially is based off of mafia gang style warfare
Mhm.
and how vampire society sort of evolved from that. And various
In the
duels
United States, they
in
had a different
the
thing in Europe.
United States. Europe is very different, yeah. And what a society would be built up from that. Um, so I mean that was my main idea, and I decided to say, with urban fantasy, it's usually a mishmash of multiple different mythologies thrown into a melting pot, of a world. So I wanted to construct a world based on um, a parallel of our history. I sort of look at it sort of like a big giant fan fiction of our world and of Greek and Roman and Celtic mythology, as well as some Eastern mythology.
But
So
one of the nice twists that we built up, mainly you, built up was the idea that there's the secret world like you have in many urban fantasies, but it's not all that secret. Almost everybody at the really top crust level knows about it. It's
yeah,
all run at the top level, everyone does because they can offer immortality to anyone, but only so many people will be given it. So that pretty much every government, with a single exception, is directly plugged into this supernatural organization. There's the European League and the American League, but they're all sort of part of the same grand conspiracy. So only the people below a certain level are, victims of the secret they don't know. Um, and the other thing that I really liked watching her build and then working with her on it is the idea that monsters aren't monsters. Kathleen got a lot of inspiration from Being Human, the original English, the British version. And the idea is that all these people live the same kinds of lives that most of us do. It's just that they have some slightly different problems. And in fact, the whole the coffee theme, Jamaica Blue Magic, French Roast Apocalypse, is based on the fact that many of the main characters either live in or run or involved with a coffee house that happens to also hide a halfway house for monsters who want to come out and reintegrate into society. And so they're running a coffee house, and it's a completely ordinary, normal life that all of these people are living. And the real monsters are often human beings. Dylan, one of the main characters, was one of these monsters, completely unconsciously. He thought he was doing the right thing, but
yeah,
they're the ones going around slaughtering people who don't deserve it. While the monster is just sitting there saying, hey, I just want to hang out with my friends, man.
yeah.
That's sort of where it comes from.
Yeah. I sort of wanted to do a Alice's Cafe with the coffee house, to sort of try to make people deal with ordinary problems, even though they really weren't ordinary problems. Because
Yeah.
how
So we
ordinary,
switch off regular people problems of, okay, you're really upset that you got transformed into a revenant and this is messing with your life. And then we switch off to, and the entire world is threatened by the veils being ripped open and magic becoming more powerful and monsters and blah, blah, blah.
or so and
And
so plugged up the toilet because they put too
yes,
much dragon dung in it, that sort of
yeah,
thing.
There was why are you keeping a dragon in the upstairs? Who gave you permission to do that? Yes, this is literally a problem. That's like the fourth book, is it? That we run into the dragon that gets taken in secretly by the twins and Rose. Yeah. Anyway, so that's a lot.
The main viewpoint character is Dylan. Tell us a little bit about him.
Dylan was a monster hunter, born and raised by a fanatical, I would like to say, ex-military gentleman who strongly believed that the paranormal was against humanity. And Dylan really believed he was doing the right thing. In fact, he sort of saw himself very much Captain America or a hero. One day he discovers that the world is run by monsters and decides to expose the world. Unfortunately, that backfires and he finds himself in a very difficult situation. And
namely, his family gets killed because of what he did. You see this in the first chapter. The first chapter basically gives the background that leads up to him running from the monsters, the real monsters, because some of the monsters are monsters. The Blackwells specifically, and specifically for Dylan, a demon who originally is called Beckman and later takes on the name Dobson. Yeah. But basically, they're the same. Uh-oh, another dog has come in. Remove the dog.
That Dylan, my hero ends up being a social worker due to the fact that he's changing his way.
Yeah, he becomes a revenant, one of the monsters he used to hunt, and falls in love with a vampire, one of the kinds of monsters he commonly hunted, and has to deal with the fact that he's been a mass murderer. Okay. And how is he going to see himself as a good person? And then in this book, as Kathleen mentioned, suddenly he is cursed with mortality. He is given back the thing he would have given anything to get 50 years ago when he was first changed. But he spent longer as a revenant, longer with all of these undead beings as his friends and co-workers and sometimes allies in combat. And being human isn't what he is anymore. That's his past. And he comes to the realization that being human sucks. and he wants to be this invincible rage monster again, even though there's some terrible, terrible things about being a revenant. It can make you into a literal monster and you're almost unstoppable. Yeah. But the whole point is he wants to break the curse and go back to being a, quote, monster, because being a human was just as much a monster, and he can't help or be with his friends as well.
No one's going to take him seriously.
They can't, well, yeah, they suddenly say, oh my God, you're vulnerable, Dill. We got to wrap you up in cotton batting and keep you away from combat. Although one of the interesting things is that even while he's mortal, he demonstrates, no, he was a monster hunter, and by God, he knows how to hunt monsters. And even if he is mortal, don't you underestimate him. Of course, part of that's because he's actually over 50 years old, even though he looks like he's still teens and always will.
He looks like he's in his 20s.
Okay, he got up to that. I'm sorry, not teens, he's early 20s.
Oh, okay.
In his appearance, but he'll never get any older now. Right. Once you die, so to speak.
There's another major character, Jared. Now, what's the story with that one?
Jared is the reflection, so to speak, of Dylan. Jared comes from the only country on the planet that isn't part of the grand conspiracy, a place called Engelschand, which of course translates from German to angel's hand. Engelschand used to be part of the magic world. In fact, they were a tremendously respected part of it. They originated some of the witch hunters that they use to destroy those that are true monsters, beings of great supernatural power that really are trying to enslave, consume, or destroy humanity. But through a series of events, the founder and main family of Engelschand broke away from the supernatural world and kicked out all of the supernatural influences a couple of 100 years ago. Nobody in Engelschand, except a very few at the top, even know that the magical world exists. Jared was informed of this when his oldest sister requested him to assist a friend of hers whose son needed some help at school. He wasn't working as well, fitting in. And then she had to tell Jared that this son of her friends wasn't human. So all of a sudden, at the age of like 15, Jared is told that all the fantasies that he read when he was a kid that he was told absolutely was bullshit, because Engelschand is absolutely materialistic, rational, etc. Suddenly he's told, no, actually, that wasn't true, that there are fae and vampires and zombies and ghouls and dragons and everything out there in different ways. And he has to adapt to it. The reason he's the reflection of Dill is because Dylan started out, he was pretty much at the bottom of society. Jared's at the absolute top. He's part of the ruling family of Engelschand, fabulously wealthy, educated, trained, as a throwback even to old style nobility. He sees himself as a knight and carries around a sword. In fact, there's a magical sword that he carries with him because it's a blade of honor for his whole family. It's been his family for God knows how long. But what he doesn't know until he got older, what he didn't know is that it actually is a magical sword, and it's specifically made for killing supernatural beings in a terrifying way, which he learned during the course of the book. You'll find out exactly what it's like. So Jared gets dragged into this because one of the people that he knew in the magical world is the initial victim of the murder that we'll actually hear in the part that we read. And his sister basically lets him know this has happened and tells him to do what he can to help the widow. And since he's thinking of himself as a knight, this is, okay, you've given me an opportunity to do something, which is good, because he was actually in depression because he had made friends with his roommate, the Lane She, and had fallen in love with his roommate's sister, whose name was Fiona. And both of them got killed, or at least apparently killed. As far as he knows, they're dead. First it was Fiona who was apparently murdered, and then, as far as he knows, Keenan died in the events in Paris, which happened in the first book. So he's really depressed, and now suddenly he gets a chance to do something that sounds meaningful within the world of the supernatural that he had been sort of separated from after becoming part of it. So right. He's a sort of an isolated person brought into it.
Kathleen, what's your favorite part of Jamaica Blue Magic?
I have two parts, and it's hard for me to decide which, but I would have to stick likely with the climax of the book, which
You mean with the zombie pirates?
The zombie pirate battle, yeah. I came up with that. I thought about it, and I wrote the entire book just to get to that part.
Well,
haven't we all done that?
Yeah, I can see.
I really wanted zombies. Zombie pirates.
I've never seen in mind, but I have had a line in mind that about 7 years that you wrote
about a whole book just to get to that line.
In my case, it'd be more like 24 books, but I've saved this line that I'm going to put in a book that will be written fairly soon that will go all the way back to 1634 to Galileo Fair, which came out in 2004. And I've had this line ever since. So it's not a whole scene.
One line.
I'll tell you what it is, but I'll tell you what then, let's go into the reading from Jamaica Blue Magic. And then when you're done with the reading, we'll come back and
Okay.
discuss. Now, once you start reading, I'm going to black out my screen. I'll
right.
be here, but you know, that I don't want.
For some reason, it doesn't shift to me. I tried to make it shift, but I don't know.
Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and start reading. And
All right.
I know I can
Okay.
do it because I've done it, but I will black out my screen. Yeah, here it is. All right. So just tell me. Go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
All right. We're doing this is chapter 4. The Dylan is on vacation and trying to relax in Jamaica, and he went to a bar, ran into a demon that claims he may have Dylan's mom's soul under his control. But fortunately, a bunch of his friends showed up there and stopped him from getting into a fight with the demon right away because it was obviously what he wanted. So at this point, they don't really know what this demon is or what he wants. So they've been trying to find out, and that's where we start. Chapter 4. His name is Dobson, John said, as they walked along the white sand beach. Behind them, the soft tones of the band echoed in the distance. The crowd around the stage had grown considerably, making it impossible to hear. So Dylan and John had decided to take the discussion to the beach while the others enjoyed the band and each other's company. That was quick, Dylan said. You guys haven't lost your touch, but Dobson? Not using the same family name? Demons tend to reincarnate in the same family line. Dylan stopped and pulled off his shoes and socks. Next to him, John did the same and rolled up his jeans. He married Beckman's daughter, Sarah, became headmaster after her father retired. John sank his toes into the sand. Apparently she wasn't allowed to take over. Sexist son of a bitch. Dylan brushed his hair from his face. Any idea why he's here? Honestly, no idea. I'm a psychologist, comic book writer, and artist, Del. Hacker only a distant fourth. Tina has to keep her nose clean. She's running for magistrate next November. He scrubbed the back of his head with his hand. You'll have to ask Felipe. Wouldn't be surprised if Dobson's looking for financial supporters and students for his school. Lots of Americans with money come here on vacation. He can pimp all he wants here. This isn't exactly the establishment where you find those kind of supporters, John. Sometimes John failed to consider the social differences between groups of people. He lumped everyone together. You're either a friend, a victim, an oppressor, or someone who didn't give a damn. Social groups, man. Rich people have their own circles. They don't mess with us little folk. Well, he don't seem to agree with you, Dill. Him being here says something different. I really doubt he flew all the way to Jamaica just to be a pain in your ass. John made his way to the water's edge and they walked along the surf. The younger revenant was right, which once more brought them back to why Dobson was at Alfred's. He was meeting someone he didn't want his usual crowd to know about. Bingo! John snapped his fingers and turned on his heel so the water rolled against the back of his legs. And he brought goonage with him, so whoever he's meeting with him makes him uncomfortable too. Maybe the entire fucking place put him on edge. Face it, John, Alfred's is full of ghoulage and other not vampire or demon types. In the distance, Dylan could see the moon. It hovered over the sea, spreading its light over the wavelets. Yeah, the Blackwells and their allies were known for their dislike of other beings, so it stood to reason that Dobson would be nervous anywhere there were a lot of revenants, ghouls, and other beings that weren't demons or vampires. Possible, John shrugged. Crowds put me on edge in general. Restaurant makes me feel like I'm underwater, too crowded. Yeah, he's a demon, John, not Asperger's. Whatever. Maybe demons can have Asperger's too. I'm living proof revenants can be. John folded his arms. Not everyone thinks like a PC, Dill. Some of us are Mac or Linux. He was born in a human body. You get what you drive in and take it with you into undeath. Okay, yeah, you're right. Got it. The revenant waded into the water and let it slosh up to his ankles. It was cool and felt nice against his skin. I won't make assumptions about how his brain works, okay? He wanted to ask why it was so important, but knew John would just launch into an argument about deducing behavior from people's personalities and habits. How people thought was very important to John. Understanding it was how the Revenant got along with others. Good, he is still a fucking racist butthole. Knows him talking to anyone in particular? Not that I remember. Dylan thought back to when he'd first noticed Dobson. The demon had stood out like a beacon, but he hadn't appeared to be paying attention to anyone in particular. Oh, Christ, whatever happened to your sight? Years ago, you never missed a thing, Del. John kicked at the water and sent an arch of spray across the surface. But John, you know my sight's been crap since I died. Just starting to get this psychic chick bad. As a superpower, you got him sight sucks. You know that, right? Up ahead, the lights from the hotel cast blue, red, and gold light off the ocean's surface. There were 3 hotels up ahead, 2 3-stars with a harbor, 1 5-star beyond that. The beach wasn't empty. People walked along the edge, some of them leaving Alfred's, others closer to the hotels. Would have been nice if we could use your psychic shit to see who he met. Better yet, see why he's here. Don't work glad that, dude. Hell, I wish it did. Throwing up his hands, Dylan nearly dropped a shoe in the water. Wait a minute. He did recall a couple just in more expensive clothing. The woman was a fae, man was a vampire. That should have gotten his attention right away. Fae-vampire combinations were rare, even in the aristocracy of the American League. The Euro League was the opposite. Fae were a commodity. From their point of view, dangerous creatures that could only be properly controlled by either being segregated away from all mortals or by being pair-bonded with a vampire, married to them, with the vampire the dominant of the pair. According to the European traditions, this was a happy symbiosis. The Fae, bonded to the vampires, kept under control, and the vampire strengthened by the Fae blood. A vamp who regularly took Fae blood could walk in daylight and eat regular food, and even get a lot stronger if they took more blood. It's totally different in America, and even more so in New York City. American vampires avoided Fae, generally chose other vampires as companions. It was mostly practicality. When the American vampires had essentially declared their independence from Europe along with a mortal American Revolution, they cut themselves off from the support network too. The so-called Franklin formula that made America's vampire immortals was homegrown and didn't require Fae. Fae companions had been made illegal when the slave trade was ended in the 1800s, two being seen as essentially the same. Nowadays, the policy with Fae was don't ask and don't tell. If the Fae was close enough to pass as human, they're just treated as human. America also had a gourmet blood trade, which sort of made up for the lack of Fae. Though Dylan knew there was a strong black market for Fae blood, often in control of the families like his constant nemesis, the Blackwells. So he should have noticed that. John had gone on talking about his psychic powers. No offense, I like the stuff in the comics better. John's words barely registered. Okay, John, I got one of those gut feelings all of a sudden. What kind of gut feeling? Same kind you got when we were about to be jumped by imps in the park? John asked, looking over his shoulder to the beach. Yeah, sort of. Dylan squinted. I saw a woman and a man. They were there for the music. She was Faye, one of the Lane She. Which made sense. Lane She liked music. But if the vampire wanted her satiated, he'd please her with a loud, energetic crowd and a concert before they fed for the night. Dylan's gut tightened. Lane She fed off of spirits. Why would Dobson care about a Lane She? John looked skeptical. Because, Dylan said, starting to walk faster, they're all you-can-eat buffets for a vampire or a demon. The younger Revenant's eyes widened. Oh, crap, we gotta find her. Without delay, both Revenants sprinted up the beach, splashing along the shoreline past the trickle of weary humans, making their way back to their hotels. Ahead, the beach thinned. The green foliage thickened along the shore with large-leafed tropical plants, twisted branch trees, and brightly colored flowers that hugged the shoreline as the tide brushed against their roots. A few figures dotted the beach ahead. Some walked in the shallows, water to their ankles as they passed the groves, and admired the moon shining on the ripples beyond. Some were so distant Dylan wasn't able to make out their features, even with his night vision. Only the man closest to them was really visible. He was tall, dark-haired, dressed in tan shorts, brown leather belt, and a blue silk button-up top. He wore a gold watch, a Panama hat, and a short tan knit scarf around his neck. Held his loafers in one hand as he walked, while the other hung at his side, and his gaze wandered the shore and coast ahead of him. The man's steely gaze focused on Dylan as he studied him tensely. He was a vampire. Well, Jesus, they having a goddamn convention? No, wait. He was the vampire at Alfred's. Thought had just cleared Dylan's mind when something fast streaked from the brush and slammed into the vampire. The man's hands moved, but not fast enough, as a small blonde form blurred by in a flurry of movement even Dylan had a hard time following. There was a fountain of blood. His claws tore across the man's throat, and his head toppled from his shoulders, eyes wide, barely registering his death in their glazed stare. The figure stopped for an instant as her other hand ripped the black heart from the victim's chest. The heart crumbled in her fingers, and she giggled as the bloodstains ashed away from her clothing. She looked young, barely in her teens. Long, white blonde hair was neatly cut around a pretty, innocent, childlike face, and she was dressed in a dark pink top with short sleeves and a white wrapped skirt with a bow in the back. On her head was a large white hat with a pink ribbon, a big flamingo feather, and a wide brim, and she wore a jeweled choker around her neck. Her eyes were huge and wide set, one red, the other gold, and 4 beating wings kept her feet from touching the ground. The girl turned in place, a hovering dragonfly, and looked in their direction. She smiled unnervingly, a childish yet knowing expression, and shot up into the sky, leaving Dylan and John stopped in their tracks, staring. Then she was gone, leaving only ripples, a heap of empty clothes, and a gold Rolex watch behind her. John slowly turned his head so his incredulous gaze met Dylan's. What the fuck did I just see? You can come back now, Eric.
All right. Sorry, I did. That was a faster ending to the chapter. I should be starting out. Sorry. Right. Now, where are you going to go? Tell me, just give us a little idea of what's coming next in the Fall of Veil series. And how long do you expect the series is going to go?
Well, I plan 9 books.
How many?
9 of
9.
them.
Okay.
And essentially, my idea for this series is it's about the return of magic to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically about how the secret world slowly becomes exposed to
The whole world. Yeah.
and how they have to deal with it, and how the mortal world has to deal with it, and
we're sort of going. It's an ensemble cast, first of all.
Yeah.
So like Dylan isn't the main character in all of them.
No.
Okay.
And we also, Kathleen's also planned them out as different subgenres, so to speak.
Yes, different so my 3rd book is basically a political drama. The 4th book is
Courtroom.
a courtroom, a crime. It's a mystery followed by a courtroom drama. Then I have a
courtroom drama that's actually is dealing with the problem that you hear in this book. You hear Dylan dealing with little bits of it over the phone, where apparently his young charges, the twins, ended up killing someone that turns out to have been a murderer, but they don't know at the time exactly what was going on, except that they've gotten themselves in trouble, and now the European League wants them tried.
But it's basically a crime and courtroom procedural. So I try to make each book different than the other one.
Okay.
So that
is the 5th book the kaiju
Yes.
New York one? Yep.
Yeah, it has the dragon in New York City where everything gets blown. So
and where there's a baby dragon involved.
yeah.
All right. So 9 books all told, and you've got, well, 2 are now out.
Yep.
Do you have a title for the third one?
We're
Or
still working on that because they
still
all have to
working on
have
that? Yeah.
all
yeah.
has to have coffee themes, and
Yep.
the first one's French Roast Apocalypse. This one's Jamaica Blue Magic. This next
all
one,
gonna-
the working title is just Fairy Queen, but we got to figure out what the actual title is going to
Yeah.
be.
Are
They
you gonna
all
have coffee themes all the way through?
Yep.
We're certainly trying to, because if we can manage it, it's a really good signature. Just like all the other series that have some sort of a signature, like
Oh no, yeah,
X,
yeah.
A is for this, B is for that.
Sure. No, it's just the problem you're gonna run into is finding names that haven't been seized by some brand or other is kind of, like Cafe Verona. The problem is this a little too Starbucky, and Major Dickinson's blend is too much Pete's, and
Yeah.
so there's
That's
Mocha
always the problem,
Java.
because we use a name of a coffee and then something relating to what's going on. So French
Yeah,
Roast
no, I know.
Apocalypse,
It'll be a
stuff.
challenge for you. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me. I don't have a lot of time because you're going to want some time for the reading
Yep.
for your next book. But if there's anything further you want to say about The Fall of Veils, we should do it now, because I want to move into asking Ryk you a question about a couple other things.
Yep.
Everything, Kathleen?
Well, it's been a challenge to work on it, but for the last 8 years, I've been working on it and doing a great deal of research and writing, and I look forward to seeing it.
And it's also something we're working on together. So that's a
Yeah.
cool thing. We used to do that when we were before we were married. We actually did a lot of writing and working on stories together when we were doing fan fiction and stuff. And so working on this is like recapturing some of what we used to do.
I'm better than
Yeah.
I'm better than
Yeah, and I like doing the historical research in that. I mean, I absolutely love that. So
It's the stuff that I don't do, but I know how to write action and do all that kind of stuff. So she has me do these pieces, and she does the
a
background.
number of books with you. I know,
You know exactly what I'm good at.
there are
You
things
also know that you have to
do
smack
well and
me
things
to
that we are
stop with the
going to
melodrama.
say, hey, you take
Eric, he came up with Engelschand, and he wanted me to try to figure out how to fit it into Germany, and then figure out how this little country could exist.
Well, I'd figure we'd come up with it a long time ago, and it would fit in where I had it when we were writing it before. Fine, because that was a space opera universe, and it was in a future where somebody else was messing with history, so you could have anything that you wanted at that point.
Oh.
But then you wanted to bring it into your thing, and at that point, then you said, but where does it fit in history? And I said, well, you want it in your world. That's great. I love it. But it's your problem to make it fit with real history, because that ain't my thing, or I'd be working with Eric on 1632.
Yeah, no, it's. I know. I managed to. Well, I can't say I had to force you, but I got Ryk to work with me on hard SF books because I can't do them alone. I don't have the technical background and the scientific skills that he does. So,
You didn't force me, although I was terrified when you first asked.
well, yeah, I remember, but it's all worked out quite well. We're working on a 7th one right now.
Yeah. By the way, you got to look at that. I sent you like 10, 15,000 words of it, and I was waiting for you to look over it and make sure that, as usual, you look over it and make sure that it's
Okay,
cool.
wait. I don't remember getting that. So,
All right, I'll send it to you again.
Send it to me again, because it could be. I'm sorry.
Well, by now it's probably lost somewhere in your email.
I'm busy. Just send it to me again. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Listen, I would like to. If we're going to do your reading, plus I want to raise a couple things. So let's move off Jamaica Blue Magic for a moment.
Okay.
Anyway, Ryk, you've got more books coming out in the next. Actually, you've got in the next several months. So tell us a little bit about them.
Well, first of all, you're going to be re-releasing Demons of the Past's first volume,
Our readers,
Revelation.
We already published the 2nd and 3rd, but Ryk got the right back or first.
So now we finally got the rights back, so you can have all three in a house, which is good. And of course, the first one for Fall of Ales. Recently, you published the God's War, Mask of Ares. So after that, we're going to be doing God's War, Spear of Athena, which will finish the God's War duology. I'm going to be reading a little bit from, there's going to be 2 books in that one.
All right.
Then I expect sometime in May, June, whatever, but whenever we can do it, as soon as I'm done, is going to be the 4th book in the Arenaverse series, which is titled Shadows of Hyperion. I'm a good chunk through that now, and I'm really flowing with it, so I expect that to be done, at least the first draft, fairly soon. Then I'll beat on it and send it to you when it's edited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
I'm enjoying working on that. There's some other things that I'm working on, like Adventures Academy. I've got the first parts of that one written, and I'm well into the first book of the Spirit Warriors, which will end up, once that's done, it's going to be the 3rd in a trilogy of fantasy stories, the first being the Phoenix books, which you're going to be bringing out too, republishing.
Mm-hmm.
And the second being God's War, and the 3rd being the Spirit Warriors. These are 3 epic fantasies that are taking place at the same time in the same world, that intersect but are with different main characters dealing with different problems, because my world of Zarathan is too large for you to have just one set of heroes solve all the problems.
All right. Okay. Now, you want to do a reading. Which book, what are you going to read from?
I'm going to read from God's War, The Mask of Ares, which you published a while back.
Okay.
Yep.
And remind me, because I know I should know, but I don't have my charts available, and I'm afraid to try to find them because I'll disconnect. Ryk, you know how bad I am with luck.
Yep.
I don't get along with luck. Never have. They don't like me. I don't know why. I never did anything to hurt them, but they just don't. So I can't remember when, because I know the second book. When do we have a schedule?
I think you said March.
Yeah.
The second book should be coming out in March.
Yeah. So it's going to be within about 6 months. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we will now do a reading from God's War, The Mask of Ares.
Mask of Ares.
And I will once again disconnect or close my video down, and I will be here over. Okay, so go ahead.
All right. This will be one of my favorite scenes from the book. It's chapter 9. It happens when our main heroes, Ingram, Urel, and Quester, have been captured by a group that have been pursuing them, and now they're imprisoned, and they don't know exactly why these people have captured them or not, but they're stuck. Chapter 9. Ingram blinked his way slowly back to consciousness into a blurred world filled with a vaguely underwater green. The dim green light, he finally realized, was from sunlight filtering through the innumerable leaves of the forest sea. Having made that determination and finding his mind starting to gain some coherence, he blinked again and forced himself to focus. He was sitting up, bound to and against something. From the feel, without raising his head, it felt like 2 somethings, backs. Quester's and Urel's, almost certainly. Moving only his eyes, he looked to one side, then the other. Yes, on the left his wrist was bound to Urel's, and on the right to Quester's armored primary hand. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw other rope which indicated their captors had also efficiently bound Quester's second hands. They were also gagged, which didn't surprise him. Some mages and others could evoke power just by speaking. He thought there might also be power-inhibiting cords wound through the ropes, but it was hard to tell. Either way, getting out of this was not going to be easy. There were voices around him, and now he could finally make them out. Been tracking them this whole time. A tenor voice, controlled but angry. You and all the others, yes, but you didn't catch them, did you? That voice was deeper, a touch smug. That was our group, and a good thing, too. They were laying for you, remember? Both had familiar accents. From Aegea, definitely. Aurel was right. But this sounds like there are at least 2 groups hunting for me? He raised his head. 8 people sat or stood in a rough circle a short distance off. They all fit the descriptions Aurel had given them. All part of the same general force? He didn't recognize the specifics of their outfits, but that didn't mean much. A private guard or secret operations group wouldn't publicize their dress code and insignia. 3 of them were unhelmed, though likely not without head protection, but they all had the same dark clothing with hints of some form of armor underneath, and, with one exception, all of them were clearly armed. One trained in barehanded fighting, perhaps, maybe even a god warrior candidate, or possibly just as a concealed weapon. There didn't seem to be any others, at least not to Ingram's quick glance around. That didn't, unfortunately, mean they were unwatched. Hey, the boy's awake. Forget him, the deeper voice said, showing it was the bareheaded, unarmed one talking for his group. He's not the target. What? I'm not. That makes no sense. The coins are not absolutely clear on that. The tenor, this one holding a rune-covered staff, obviously the leader of the group Aurel had seen. They're wavering. The unarmed man, whose head was shaved so it shone, grimaced. Elian? One of the armored figures drew out a glittering golden coin. A full shield, in fact, over 1.25 inches across, with a golden thread attached to it. The woman let it drop to hang from the thread and gestured over it, muttering an invocation too low to hear. The coin immediately swung away from the vertical, pointing in the direction of the bound captives. But it was not steady. It swung erratically across a noticeable arc, and occasionally even twirled around to point away from them by almost 90 degrees, although most of the time it stayed somewhere in the arc bounded by the 3 captives. What's wrong with the Athena cursed thing? It was behaving perfectly fine up until now. The bald one ran his hand over his head in a distracted gesture. Ours started having trouble earlier, around the time we approached that outlying estate I mentioned before, said the one with the staff. It concerns me. Ingram tried, despite the gag, to say, Who are you people, and what do you want from us? It, of course, came out as incomprehensible murmuring, but it did get some attention. Sorry, boy, but since we don't know your capabilities, you stay that way, the woman named Elian said, putting away the coin. The one with the staff sighed. Look, arguing gets us nowhere. We both followed the coins here, and even if they decide to get confused now, they can't be argued. The girl's the one we want. The longer we wait, the more chance the other groups find us. Let's all just agree we both found her, and we can all get the reward. I don't like it, the bald man said, now rubbing his chin and glaring at the 3 captives. Word is that the Ionaxed Tegi brought these straight from the hands of Ares himself. Something is messing with them, Takis. Pretty sure the girl's a mage of some kind, Takis said. Maybe she was working on getting a protective spell going. Let's just take all 3, Ilion suggested. There was a pause. All right, that's not a bad idea. There's something familiar about that boy anyway. I can't place it, but I know I've seen him somewhere. Maybe he's important too. And the bug? They said the target was a woman. Do you know how to tell what sex an heuristic is? 'Cause I sure don't. We'll take it too. How do we work this, Panos? Takis asked the bald-headed one. The retrieval scrolls are meant to send back a prisoner and 2 guards. Panos sighed. Look, in the interest of getting us all out of here with a piece of the credit, I'll let you choose. We've got 2 scrolls, yours and mine. One of us takes the girl, sending 2 of theirs along. The other gets the other 2 prisoners, but only sends 1 with them. And we both instruct both sides to support the fact that we were both in on the capture? Agreed. Panos turned to the rest. You all hear that? As far as anyone back home's concerned, all of us were in the catch. We're all in on the reward. Got it? Others nodded with a chorus of yes. Panos and Takis gripped hands. Agreed, said Takis. And for that, you get to take the girl. We'll take the other two. Done. Panos began to turn. You will release those children immediately. The high, clear, cold voice cut across the clearing like an Arctic knife, freezing all 8 of their captors for an instant. Striding out of the shadows of the forest came a tall figure, clad in a long battle coat of black and silver, hair matching the coat, eyes cold as the voice. Victoria Vantage locked gazes with the others as she came. She had no weapons visible, but her very movement was a warning of peril, every step unwavering, confident, and icily furious. What the? This is none of your business, woman, Takis said, and at his gesture the others were unsheathing their weapons. First, I am Zarathantan gilded, young man, and that makes any instance where people are taken captive and their captors argue how to divide their spoils my business. The adventurer's patch gleamed high on one shoulder. And second, that is my niece you have there, and that makes it utterly and inarguably my business. She had approached within 70 feet of the group. Stop where you are, Panos said, matching her chill voice with his own stone-solid tones, or you're going to regret it, whoever you are. While they spoke, Ingram noticed Eliane was silent, studying Victoria with a narrowing, worried gaze. On the contrary, Victoria Vantage said, and without so much as a movement, a gargantuan double-bitted axe, 6 feet from helve to head, was in her right hand, her left coming down to get a grip. You will release my child and her friends now, or I assure you, not one of you will leave this place alive. Enough! Take her! Snapped Panos and Takis at once. 7 of them started forward. Eliane gasped and suddenly shouted, Ares balls! That's the Vantage The warning was far too late. Victoria Vantage streaked forward to meet her assailants, and a single shout in Artan echoed with supernatural power through the clearing. Shari Kahazi! A ripping storm of silver glinting light tore through the clearing, the titanic axe a blur that caught and shattered weapons, cleaved through armored torsos and exposed heads, a spinning, zigzagging streak of death that ended with Victoria on the far side of the clearing. All 8 of their captors collapsed to the ground, blood fountaining everywhere. Victoria sagged, her axe's handle her only support for several minutes as she slowly regained control of her breathing. Honestly, I'm far too old for this.
All right. Yeah, you okay? All right. Sorry.
You have to remember, I write short chapters.
Well, no, I just, I've never actually done this before, so I realize next time I do it, I'm going to have whoever's doing the reading send me ahead of time the last paragraph or something. So, because
okay, so you can say,
well,
okay,
no,
there
it's
we were.
not like I'm different from most people. I don't like readings. I don't do them. I don't go to them. It drives my wife, drives me so crazy because she would like to read. She'd like it if I read to her from my stuff, but I've never liked it. So I don't like ebooks. I mean, I don't like.
I'm the ham in the group.
No, well, no,
I'm the ham. I'll read anything.
Audiobooks. I make money off of them, but I don't like listening to them myself. So
neither do I.
Yeah, no.
I like reading and I like talking, but I don't like listening to
in
them.
the future, if I do this again, I'll make sure that whoever the author
But
is,
you know when it ends.
yeah, so I can. Oh wait, I hear the Q word, so I don't feel like a jerk at the end.
They're not like, what? Wait, where am I?
We do have not much time, 2-3 minutes, but I actually don't know if I ever asked you this. I can't remember. Oh, wait, no, no, sorry. This is a duology. I'm used to you writing longer stretches.
Well, I've written a couple of solos so far. I mean, while I have other stories in that universe, Digital Knight / Paradigms Lost is one book.
That's one book.
So far, Princess Holy Aura is the only one. Legend is the only one in its sequence. Originally, I did think of this as being a trilogy.
Do any follow-up or sequel to Princess Holy Aura?
Yes. Matter of fact, I plan for once I'm done with Shadows of Hyperion, my next Kickstarter will be for the sequel to that. Then the series of that is called The Ethical Magical Girl.
Right.
I already wrote some stuff that leads up to it. The short story On Site for the Apocalypse is some of the events of Princess Holy Aura from the point of view of the secret agent, the magical secret agents that try to capture Holy Aura, like about a third of the way through the book and fail miserably. But they're charged with trying to protect the world from, sort of like the Men in Black, the scum of the universe. But they're also rather like the SCP Foundation. They're not all that nice people themselves.
Yeah.
But the main character that I've chosen is actually fairly nice, and as she gets more involved with this, she's actually going to be one of the characters that we follow in the sequel.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then, well, you started working on our novel, which still has the working title of
Yes.
Fenrir, although I actually
Fenrir.
like that title,
Yep.
but I'm not sure it'll work.
I do like the title, and I think we can keep it. I think you read it, you'll see what I've done to justify it. And I think it works.
All right. I'm not,
so
look, I'm not honestly worried about justifying it. It's I swear to God, as the years go by, it's not that I
we
don't
get
take
less and less.
writing very, very seriously, because I do, but there are some things I just get crassly commercial about, and titles are one of them. It's like, will this help sell a book or catch people's attention? And when I'm worried about Fenrir, I like it, but I know what it refers to. And I'm not sure how many people are going to be that familiar with a monster from Norse mythology. So I don't know.
More than there would have been years ago.
Huh? Yeah,
But,
I know.
More than there would have been years ago.
Yeah.
But it's true. I don't know. But
Well, we'll see. I don't know.
I'll let you know if I come up with a more crassly commercial title.
Well, we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
for one thing, Bain Books is going to be publishing that, and I'll have to see what Tony thinks.
It's really up to them. Yeah.
If the publisher likes it, okay.
Yep.
I swear to, I mean, I'm even worse with cover art. It's like people ask me, what do you really like seeing cover art? And I say the color red. It's just because it draws the eye. I will say a really good cover artist, and I know a number, including Tom Kidd, who does the books for Bain for the 1632 series, and Laura Givens, who does them for Ring of Fire Press. I've seen them do very good, eye-catching, attractive covers without the color red in them. So it can be done.
It can be done.
It's just, I just think it catches the eye more than anything else.
So it's just like, fantasy. Put a dragon on the cover.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you get, you really do get kind of, well, it's like
I kind of wanted to put a dragon on the cover of Phoenix and Shadow. So if you reissue it, maybe we'll do that scene with the dragon.
Yeah.
Because you said we're going to change the covers on those, since they were, they were put out there by Bain, and they were, pretty well distributed. So.
Sure, you don't want to put a dragon and a blonde on there?
Oh,
a blonde dragon. Well, actually, you can, because that scene involves the demon girl Miri, who changes to a gigantic form to help fight the dragon. So she's a gargantuan, adorable blonde fighting a gargantuan dragon. And if Jim Bain wouldn't have put that on the cover, he wouldn't have been Jim Bain.
I got a cover once it was Tide of Victory, the fifth of the Belisarius books. This is years ago. And the artist, this is not his fault. I was racing to get the manuscript done, and Jim had assigned a cover before the artist had seen the manuscript. So he did a painting, you know, and just based on, you know, figuring out what he thought would work. And Jim tended to be very protective of the covers, and he didn't like his authors and artists intersecting with each other. He was very proprietary about his covers because he's also Bane's art director. And the first I saw the cover was when my author's copies of the books arrived. So I get the box and I open it up, and my wife Lucille's on one side, my daughter Elizabeth's on the other. And I open it up, take it out, and Liz says, "Who's the bimbo on the cover?" It's this blonde wearing not much of anything, holding up a sword. And I said, "I have no idea." She's not.
Well, that happened with the original issue of Digital Knight.